Welcome to the Determined People Podcast. It's where we share stories of encouragement, strength, and hope to a world that's in desperate need of it. Our guest today is Octavious Bishop. When Octavious entered high school, he was reading at a fourth grade level, and he was enrolled in special education classes. Today, he's known as Dr. Octavious Bishop, having defended his dissertation about quantifying the spectrum of depression. It's been quite a trip from special ed to becoming Dr. Bishop. Let's get started. Welcome, Octavious. Thank you for being here.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm grateful to have you here. Tell our audience a little bit about your life growing up.
Yeah. So I was raised in a single-parent home to my mother, Janet, who I love dearly. I was born in Jackson, Tennessee, raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for the majority of my childhood, and went away on a summer for a summer to Atlanta, Georgia, to stay with my uncle for a while. And I came back, and my mom had a plan for us to move to Houston.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And when you got to Houston, how old were you then?
By the time I got to Houston, I was turning 14. I was 14, about to turn 15, I believe. And so I was right in the middle, in the heart of my teenage years.
I'm sure you were an easy teenager to raise, but
I think my mom would say so.
Yeah.
I think my mom would say so.
Yeah, you seem to be a pretty chill guy. But you met a man, Emory Bellard.
Yes.
This man changed your life. Yeah. Tell us about how you met Coach Bellard and what happened.
Yes. Oh man, we would be here for 2 days if I explained the whole story. But in short, Coach Emory Bellard was a phenomenal man, and he is a legend amongst coaches, particularly in the high school ranks here in the state of Texas. And he also was an offense coordinator at the University of Texas, where he invented the wishbone offense. Some of the old heads understand what the wishbone was about, right? And then he would go on to be the head football coach for Texas A&M University and then Mississippi State University. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of his career, he moved back to Texas, and by the time I got to Westville High School, he was the head coach for Westville High School back in the 90s.
How did y'all meet?
Well, that's a really interesting story. One summer, we used to have what was called open gym, and I was playing basketball in open gym. And a coach saw me playing, and he said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to Coach Bellard." Coach Bellard was standing there. We were right outside the complex. He was smoking a pipe, and I introduced myself. He let me know who he was, and then he asked me, he said, "Hey, would you want to come out for football tomorrow?"
And
that was that caused a tad bit of uneasiness within me because things were tight at home. My mom has always worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I was also working at McDonald's at the time with my mom at night. And, things were tight, right? I grew up in a single parent. I don't have any brothers and sisters that live in the house with me, but Mom and I relied on each other a lot. Sure. And so it would be a big sacrifice for me to go play football and kind of leave her with the bulk of all the responsibility. So I told Coach Bellard this, and I was a little bit uneasy, but I began to have a tremendous amount of embarrassment about it. And I said, Coach, my mom's not going to let me play. And then he asked me, he said, do you have a phone number I could call her? And then I became even more embarrassed because we didn't have a home phone.
Sure.
And so he said, well, where do you live? And, my high school was a mix of kids that had and kids that didn't. It was a unique situation, a beautiful time at Westville. There were some kids who were pretty privileged, but we all got along really well during this period of time. But we lived on a street called Kirkendall in Houston. And we lived, it was behind what used to be a clothing store, Wieners, the apartment complex. Uh-huh. And so I told Coach Bellard this. He knew exactly where I lived. And the significance behind this is there is a conversation between he and my mother. He found out where I lived. He took the time to obviously have a conversation with my mother. And Coach Bellard is no longer with us. He's now in heaven with the Lord. And there's a conversation that happened between he and my mom that I don't really know what that conversation was about. All I know is my mom told me, you're going to jump the fence. Somebody's going to come pick you up. for practice, and I went to practice.
No kidding.
And
Every day.
that's how it started.
Oh, wow. So you never played football before?
I played pickup ball. I was on a Pee Wee league one time, and I was on the team. But I grew up playing basketball. Grew up playing basketball, doing some wrestling, and things like that. Where I was from, but when I came to Texas, football took on a different tone. Football is king here.
It's religion.
And I didn't know that, And so I would say I was truly introduced to how the game operates by Emory Bellard.
Coach Bellard looked into your academic record, and he saw something that didn't add up.
Yeah.
What was it?
He saw that, first of all, he realized that I was able to actually pick up the offensive scheme really well. I didn't have a problem with picking up how to play the game and what they were asking me to do, but it didn't match with my academics. It didn't match with my history. And so what happened was the school, and I'm so thankful for Westfield High School, and not just Emory Bellard, but the staff and the coaches and the principals and all the teachers, the people who invested in me, because he let them know that in his mind, I was smarter than what I knew I was and what they thought I was. And so I began to be tested for the first time in my life that I remember. And I found out that I had some learning deficiencies. One in particular had to do with reasoning. If you have a issue with reasoning, you're probably going to have an issue with comprehension. And, really how you see the information, how you distinguish it. And a lot of that has to do with what happened early on in childhood with the, inconsistent, difficulty with mom trying to do the best she could do,
of course,
with us surviving. So, so to make a long story short, I would go and get tested. And then the team that they put together went to work. Stephen Gunther, that's a very significant name for this talk. Stephen Gunther was an offensive line coach and a linebackers coach at the time. And Stephen Gunther picked me up every day. He would take me home every day after every game and pick me up every day, and we would stay late. And I would go and get tutoring every day before class. And before I knew it, and the end of by the time I left high school, I could go to any school I wanted in the country. I was considered one of the top linemen in the country. But not just that, academically, I found my groove. For the first time, I had someone to advocate for me academically and not just place me into a corner to forget about me.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And let me ask you a question. Did you think of yourself as dumb before all this testing went on and learning about your learning deficiencies and how to work through them?
That's a very good question and a very significant question that no one's really ever asked me. The truth is, yes. I had very, to this day, I would say it's really interesting when you hear people say, for me to hear people say doctor, professor, even former professional football player. That's all interesting, but particularly the academic piece. Because of the wounds and the scars related to not being believed in academically, I still deal with that today. I do. I still deal with that today. And even after all of the accolades and the degrees and all the different things, those type of things, that confidence early on is very critical for a child to have confidence academically. And whatever they do well in, right? Some people are better at math, some people are better at reading, science. But for some reason, there was nothing that I could grasp onto until I got to high school about me that I considered to be smart. Yeah. But my coaches and teachers helped me.
You told me one time that Coach Bellard said, "Octavious, you're smart." And that was something you said that he's the first man you had trusted and you believed him.
That's the first man to ever tell me that I'm smart. And how he did it was he was really funny. And this is back in the midnight. He's puffing on a pipe,
probably in school. Yeah.
and he's just sitting there. He was so wise, right, and so bright, highly intelligent, really smart. He goes, "Octavious, there's a big difference in being intelligent and being smart." I didn't get that. I'm 46. I didn't get that until just 15 years ago, right? And exactly what he meant. And he kind of went on. He was like, "Yeah, some people can figure out a formula. but not everybody can make the right decision, Bub. And it took me years to truly recognize that there is a difference between intelligent and being smart. And so he said, "You're smart. You're smart." And so when I was able to receive that, it really changed me different inside. My heart was different. Yeah. I was different. And I was encouraged by another man, somebody I looked up to.
Sure. What it says to me is that the man had built enough legacy of trust with you at that time that when he said it, you believed it.
Yes.
And you believing it caused you to believe in yourself. To go to work and do the work, you had a lot to catch up on. Yeah. I mean, special ed classes to honors classes when you're in high school is an enormous leap that a lot of people might not even stick with. Did you ever want to quit?
I was so, before I got to Westfield, that's another good question. Things I don't talk about very often. Quitting for me, the thought of quitting was unfortunately a dark time in my life before I got to high school. Wanting to quit had to do with me having thoughts of suicide, having this heavy despair about my circumstances, right, and my situations and how things weren't changing. How would I even be able to help my mom because I'm not smart enough and intelligent enough to do it? And so in my mind, quitting came before that. Once another male influence, and even the teachers and the female, somebody in my world in academia that believed in me within Westfield, once they believed in me, that went away. It was almost as if there was a shift that happened within me, within my spirit, within me as a person, that said, "Wait a minute, hold on. I don't have to have those thoughts anymore because now I have something to live for." So for me, it wasn't difficult. Now I had attached myself to people like Steve Gunther, to Coach Bellard, to Vince Sebo, to a lot of the other coaches on the staff. Robert Morrison. These are pioneers in my world, right? Mm-hmm. People may not even know them, but to me, they're pillars in my world. Sure. And so because I had people believing in me, there was a shift in my mind, right? The brain is hardwired, but the mind paints the picture. And now I was given the brush to paint life how I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just my brain telling me that it didn't work. I had some options in how I was going to achieve what I need to achieve. And then not only that, I had partners to get there, right? These great men, these great women at Westfield High School really spoke into me. Yeah. And so it shifted and it changed for me.
That moves me. I mean, that's a monumental shift. Mm-hmm. Kid going from hopeless to hopeful. Yeah. In a very quick period of time, because you have some good people in your lives, a lot of really good people, and God's fingerprint is all over your life, and this is one. I mean, that chance meeting with Coach Bellard being there and playing football, talking to your mom, she's saying, "Okay, you have no idea how that got from A to Z on that one," but these things don't happen by accident. I do want to talk about football some because that's been a big part of your story, but I don't want to focus solely on football. But let's go to the Senior Bowl in Alabama, because all the talk was about how's Octavious Bishop going to handle this. I don't even know the guy's name, but the top defensive lineman in the country is who you were assigned to block. So the talk was, how's Octavious going to do that? Tell us about the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, so I ended up going to a different bowl. It's called the Gridiron Bowl, and it was in actually Orlando. Okay. So before we ever got to my Senior Bowl and the Senior Bowl I chose to go to and was picked for, there was this big time career, right, and all these different things, and then the anxiety of like coming, from the combine and the combine and all those different things that's happening. There's a level of doubt once you get around high-end, high-level athletes who are equal to you, right? It's different when you're playing week to week. Well, you may not be playing against the best person, right? But at this point, everybody's is up to be able to play professional football in your world in that time. So it was a bit of anxiety, but it was more so it wasn't a problem, it became a challenge.
Yeah.
So there's a level, coming to a place like the University of Texas, playing at the level in which I played at the University of Texas. We won 3 conference championships when I was here. Being a left tackle to block for Ricky Williams, it prepared me for that.
Yes.
And so I had played against the best players, in my world, from Tony Brackens to Casey Hampton to Sean Rogers. All these guys were Pro Bowlers, right? In the NFL, I'd already played against the best, so it really wasn't difficult for me to shift and play at my peak during that time. As a matter of fact, there are things in professional football I played better a lot of times. I can say when I look over my career professionally, the short time it was, than I did even in college.
Yeah. As I recall, though, the script flipped that day, and all of a sudden the talk is all about Octavious Bishop. And you start getting phone calls, a lot of phone calls from college recruiters from around the country. Tell our audience how they reached you.
Yeah. So that was, today it's funny, but there was a level of embarrassment that I can't even, you can only imagine, right? Of a teenage boy, who has a little bit of confidence, right? I'm not trying to act like I wasn't an angel. I was still trying to develop, but I was a teenager, right? And so there's this level of narcissism, and there's a level of know it all, right? And there's a level of embarrassment. That's who we are, right? Sure. When we develop.
Yeah.
And so once the recruiting started, there's this other annoying anxiety that happens because we still don't have a home phone.
Sure.
And so during what I consider the most critical time in my life, I'm having to share a payphone. Some of you who are young don't realize this, but there were payphones that had a phone number attached to it, right? John, I know you know. There are phone numbers that had you could call and somebody could call you on that phone.
Yep.
The ironic piece, though, is I shared that payphone with every pimp, prostitute, and drug dealer in the neighborhood. So it wasn't. So that's the truth about it. So I even remember somebody, a friend of mine, being on the phone. They were like, "Yeah, Coach Fulmore from Tennessee wants to talk to you." Like Big O, they're like screaming at my window, my bedroom window, and I have to run down and come get the phone. It was a neat time. I would never change any of that. It was a beautiful time. Really
Absolutely.
was.
There's people that will hear this podcast that don't even know what a home phone is anymore.
Exactly. I don't even have one. So
I don't either. We all have cell phones, right? Now, you could have gone to any school in the nation. Why did you decide on the University of Texas?
So that's a really good question. So growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is an hour and 15 minutes from Chicago. Mm-hmm. So when you grow up and you I love all things Chicago. Like, I'm a fan of all the Chicago teams. It's very painful. I'm a fan of all the Chicago teams.
I'm a Cowboys fan.
All those things. It's very painful.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that. But what my dream city to live in was always Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I knew, and I had done enough research to know that if I am able to go to Notre Dame, then I would live in Chicago. Yeah. Right, yeah. And not only that, I could do very well if anything happens.
The mind of an 18-year-old.
Yeah, so my dream school has always been Notre Dame, but things changed, right? I moved to Texas, have a relationship with Coach Bellard, who has his foothold in the state of Texas. So very quickly, I realized that, and my high school was a big-time Aggie high school. People loved the Aggies, right? Texas A&M. And I loved Texas A&M too. Don't get me wrong. I think R.C. Slocum is the salt of the earth. Mm-hmm. I thought Gary Kubiak were wonderful people. I believe I could have been just as happy at A&M as I was at Texas. Mm-hmm. But the University of Texas was special. It was something about the feel that I got when we drove into Austin that I still get when I go out of town. I come back. There's a feel that you have here that's drawing. So that's why kids are. If we get them here on campus, they want to come here. So I chose University of Texas. My mom was able to come on that trip. The only trip that we were able to take together. But at the time, there was a coach on the team, a receiver coach on the team named Cleve Bryant, and his beautiful wife, Jean Bryant, who worked in academics for years. Mm-hmm. And they took my mom under their wing, right? And the gentleman that recruited me, Steve Bernstein, and his wife, Carolyn Bernstein, they took my mom under their wing. So when I saw how happy she was and how she was treated, and that she would be able to see me play, but she would also have a community and be a part of the family. If I go off and play somewhere at USC, or I go some other place, University of Washington, or even in Wisconsin, or if it was a possibility at Notre Dame, she wouldn't be able to see me play. And so it was during that time I realized that I got a support system again. It matched pretty much with how I was successful at Westville going into high school, right? I saw my ability to be successful here at the University of Texas.
Absolutely. Touch briefly on your days at UT. I mean, you're a kid from high school who now comes into the 40 acres.
Yep.
You're a college athlete, and at UT, like religion and football are synonymous in Texas, and especially the University of Texas and their rich history of football. What was it like? I mean, just overwhelming to you? Was it overwhelming to you?
I believe it's overwhelming for just about any teenager to come into a place like this. It's all of the emotions, right? It's exciting. It's overwhelming. It's the question is, can I do this? Am I good enough? Should I be here? Right? I want to be here. I dream of being here. Right? It's all of those things. But the family atmosphere, the brotherhood. That was sparked on my recruiting visit was so immediate. It was just a match with the guys that were on the team. It was a match with the coaches. I knew that UT had a plan for me. Just like Westville and Coach Bellard, they had a plan for me. UT had a plan, right? And I fit that plan. And so I recognized that, I discerned that in my spirit, and I made that choice.
That's fantastic. And as we were talking off camera, I said I saw a picture of you doing my research for the interview of you holding Ricky Williams up, which you said was like 245, 250.
Yeah.
You're holding him up like he's a plastic toy. Like, oh my gosh, how strong is that man?
Well, I was a lot stronger then.
So you were, I guess, planning to make a career out of football post UT, and then you had an injury, broke your leg playing for the XFL. What happened?
So my professional career was cut short, but I had a really good run, right? I was picked up by the Atlanta Falcons, ended up getting drafted after that by NFL Europe, and played to Amsterdam, Holland, played all throughout that for that year. And then I came back and was actually picked up by the Oakland Raiders. So I spent a small time Oakland Raiders, and then I was drafted into the XFL. In Chicago. I finally was able to live in my dream city. It was beautiful, right? It was awesome, but I was injured, right? One night at the LA Coliseum, I ended up having a guy was thrown into back of my legs. That's what happens in football, particularly down in the trenches. And so I had a really significant injury. Came back, had surgery. I think I explained this to you before. It wasn't necessarily the break that was the big deal. Bones heal, right? They have great science. I had a great doctor, Dr. Greg Markarian, who became a really good friend who took care of me. But a week later, I ended up getting blood clots in my legs, and I had 2 in my lungs. And so I spent a significant time in ICU, and it was during that time where I had moved from the inner city of Chicago, the downtown area of Chicago, to Napersville, where Edward Hospital is. And I really began to reflect, and have some deep conversations with the Lord about, what the next move needed to be.
Interesting. You came back to UT.
Yes.
Got your master's degree.
Yes.
And then I want to switch gears real quickly, though, Octavius. I think your greatest role in life is being a husband and a father. You have a beautiful family, absolutely beautiful family. But you met your own dad. I mean, you had met your dad when you were 10, but there's a long gap in between where there's no contact at all. If you would, walk us through what that was like, seeing him as a grown man, and then I want to take it a step further after that. What was that like? How'd that come to pass?
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of counseling, a lot of prayer, a lot of deliverance had taken place by the time my dad re-entered my life. The distance between being a 10-year-old boy to being a 40-year-old man, a lot happened, right? Careers and degrees and changes. Even I'd been married by that time. And I began to recognize because I started to move more into ministry of what forgiveness really means. And so by the time I met my dad and he came to visit here, I was already ready to receive him. There was no ill will. There's not any. By that time, I had already released it to the Lord. So I was ready to receive my dad. On the flip side, I think that was a difficult time for my dad early on. Today, it's great, but I think it was difficult for him to receive the fact that I was actually open to him being in my life in this way, even though he wanted it, right? But it was a hard time, I think, for him. Sure. And I recognize that, but we were able to bond, right? And then from there, we have a great relationship today.
That's great. I wrote a book,
Yeah.
Killing My Father, Then Finding Him, which is about gratitude and forgiveness. I grew up in a home of a very fear-filled, violent home, and the book is about forgiving those who harmed you, in this case, my parents. Let's go a little farther into forgiveness. What is it? How did you actually, what did it feel like for you when you knew that you'd actually forgiven your dad?
Yeah. So first, I'd like to talk about why we forgive.
Sure.
We forgive because you don't want anybody to be your master. And at the end of the day, when we don't forgive, the one that we haven't forgiven becomes the master. Yeah. And the reason they become the master is because I heard this from Mike Tyson, which is awesome. He has a great podcast. This right here was very impactful. He said, you lose when you don't forgive because they change something about you. Mm-hmm. Some people think that they should hold on to their unforgiveness, sure, but then you change. You're not the same. The smell that you thought was a wonderful smell is not the same anymore. That color that you thought was so vivid and bright that you were excited about, your brush is broken. Yeah. So it's not as good. So forgiving my dad and the reasons why, it was a selfish reason in that way, but yet I'm a pastor and I do a lot of family, pastoral care. Mm-hmm. And I had to make sure that I was removing my hypocrisy from the equation so that God's anointing could work through me to help families.
Removing your hypocrisy.
Yes.
Interesting. Keep going.
Yeah. So I did that. I had to continue to move forward, or else I would become a slave to the unforgiveness. Yes. And then it would change me. And then, who am I as a husband? Who am I as a father? Yeah. Who am I as a friend? Right. If I allow that to continue.
Sure. Forgiveness will, lack of forgiveness will just eat you alive from within. It will destroy you because we've all heard it said, forgiveness is for you, not the one who offended you. They may not know, they may not even care. But you forgiving them at the right time. It's not like flipping a light switch. It takes time, but when it's there. I knew it with my parents. I knew it through practicing gratitude. All of a sudden, I could see them through a whole different prism, an entirely different light. And I was able to say, okay, I forgive. And they were long dead by that time. But still, if I'd held on to it, we might not be sitting here today. Right. We just don't know.
That's good work.
Yes. So, but you're put into the role of being a husband and a father. Mm-hmm. You don't have a role model growing up. Yeah. And do you feel like Coach Bellard helped to teach you about how to be a family man?
Let me tell you something. The things Coach Bellard did for me were beyond the playing field. Obviously, he was integral and had the relationships to even, pub me up around the country to get a scholarship, sure, or to be on other people's lists. But the things he did on a daily basis with Coach Bellard and the drive to practice at home with Coach Gunther, those times were just amazing because he would call me out of class every now and then after test. I didn't even know he knew how I had a test. Well, I remember I'm going out and sit down, and he would just be in his office just chilling. I thought I was in trouble or something, and I wasn't. And he would just go about it. He would just go about his day. And years later, it wasn't until years later again, right? Kind of like the intelligence and smart thing, that I realized I was like, oh man, he knew what I was missing. Yeah. He knew what I was missing. And so he wasn't just a coach. He was more than a coach, right? Coach is powerful. The most powerful words in the world, as Coach said. Yeah. But he was more than that. It was, I recognized when he would do that yes, we cared about winning and about the game of football, but he cared about me more as a person and as a man.
That's what I've always loved about your story from the first time you told me, is that this man taking a deeper interest in you as a person, developing you as a human being. It's not always, I'm sure it happens more often than we hear about, but a coach taking the time to look at your academic record and going, these things don't add up.
That's right.
This young man, there's something going on here. And instead of just shutting the file and putting it back in the filing cabinet, he did something.
Yeah, I want to say something about that,
if
that's fine. You know, we talked about this before too. I'm a product of a few legacies beyond bloodline. I really am. Whether it's Coach Gunther, whether it's Vince Sebo, whether it's Robert Morrison, who Robert Morrison never even had kids, and even but he had us, right? Yeah. Or whether it's Coach Bellard. This is a great message for anyone who's in a position of leadership. When we mentor people, and even pastors, when we disciple as Christians, disciple people, it is not just confined to our household. It's not just confined to the people that we're around. We actually, when we pour into people, it's a lineage beyond what we think an earthly bloodline is. Right. So I'm a product of men and women. Some look like me and some don't. Right? Sure. Some have the same pigment I have and some don't. Yeah. Some come from the same background and some don't. But there's a lineage that continues. And that lineage is a powerful lineage because it's a lineage that I'm using to try to be the best husband I can be, to try to be the best father. And I make many mistakes. You know, one of the things that people miss a lot of times when I put pretty photos of my family, and I'm just really proud of them. Sure. It's honest. And I have family outside the state, so I do that. The truth of the matter is I'm representing everyone that is poured into me. Yeah. It's not just about me. It's not just about my house. It's more. It's about you, my friend. It's about a lot of different things. Yes, sir. Lineage beyond my bloodline is really what I tout today.
And your kids will carry that into the next generation.
That's right.
And on down the road. That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. I want to move over to, in 2018, you defended your dissertation.
Yes.
Quantifying the spectrum of depression. Sounds fascinating, but it's also very deep. Why did you pick depression?
So many people who are in research understand this. It's really about access, right? I had access to a clinic here off of 360, who and a couple of doctors in the office who were doing ear, nose, and throat doctors, right? And so they had, one of the doctors had studied a lot of concussion things and a lot of other things, and I went to him and I asked him about, hey, how can I use this for psychology? And so, he was actually the one to actually, give me spark the move of quantifying the spectrum of depression. And it's because we had access. We had access to looking at different markers related to balance, related to acoustics in the ears, eye tracking. And so I chose the easiest path, which was quantifying acoustics. And the reason we can quantify acoustics is because in our bodies, we have the smallest muscle in our body is called the stapedius muscle. It's on a bone called stapes. And because you can hear me, it goes in one ear and out the other ear. And the information does cross back brainstem there. So ta-da, now we're able to use it. But what I was able to do was have access to a large medical database where I can anonymously get these quantifiable markers of the acoustic reflex of these patients. And what I did was I looked through it to see who was dealing with depression, right? Who was taking antidepressants. And what we found out was that, using the theory in one ear out the other, that to the high 90th percentile of individuals who deal with depression or anxiety or taking antidepressant medication all had this abnormality in the opposite acoustics, with the theory in one ear out the other. And then I have to think about, so when I'm really depressed, do I really hear what people have to say?
Interesting.
And also how I wrote this, did this dissertation in a way to make sure we are practically able to start defining anxiety and depression better. Many times we're saying we're depressed, but we're anxious. Some people was, for example, somebody will say, well, I haven't been able to sleep for the past 2 nights. I'm depressed. No, you're not. You're anxious. When you're depressed, what do all the time? You sleep all the time, right? So in our society, there are a lot of mixed messages that don't align, right, with enough balance to give us the proper education we need. Depression is the final bucket everything poured into. This is really important because we have a problem in our country with overprescribing of medication.
Absolutely.
And so if we're able to quantify markers of depression, markers of dopamine that allow us to see where a person is in real time, then we're able to recognize, okay, is this person ready for a therapeutic process, or do they need to see a psychiatrist, or do they need to collaborate and do both?
Yep.
If we can do it in real time. Right now, we're just shooting in the dark, and it's not working.
So you're giving defined markers which allow them to treat depression more effectively.
That's right.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, and we are over medicating our society. I remember being on like a elliptical trainer and watching TV, right? And every third commercial is, do you ever feel depressed?
I know.
Of course, right? Who doesn't? I mean, occasionally,
I feel
right?
bad,
Try Abilify or whatever. I'm not picking on Abilify, but that's how people get those ideas implanted in their minds.
I know.
It could just be a seasonal thing that's a period of time.
That's right. It usually is. Yeah.
But I had a guest on my podcast who talked about her anxiety and overcoming it. She had anxiety so bad that she was bedridden, and how she worked through it without medication. But the point is, I started doing research into anxiety. It's the most common mental illness. I hate to call it an illness, but that's how it's defined in America today. Over 40 million people have anxiety to one level or another. Yeah. And we're going to talk about anxiety here in a minute.
Okay.
'Cause this is fascinating stuff. How did it feel when you defended your dissertation and they said, you're Dr. Octavious Bishop?
Oh, those were beautiful words. Once again, my first thoughts went to all those people who invested in me.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I think about my mom. I think about my aunt. I think about my uncles. I think about the pastors. I think about my cousins. I think about my coaches. Everybody, right? They're all a part of that. I didn't get to that space.
You better mention your wife.
Without that. My wife. Well, there's a sacrifice for everything.
Of course.
Right? And so
she
sacrificed. My beautiful wife. She sacrificed a lot of her time, and she's a great professional herself in the medical field, and she sacrificed so that I could really complete a dream, right? Something that I wanted to do, but she backed me. She never told me not to do it. She never said it was too much. She supported me, and we finally got to the end.
That's great. Another person who believed in you.
Believed in me. That's right.
Your most important relationship with your wife. So, how did y'all meet, by the way?
We met at church. My wife grew up in what was called Christian Life Austin.
Okay.
Christian Life Church it was. Now it's Christian Life Austin. There with Pastor Rex Johnson, who's just a wonderful, wonderful man and has been great for my life. And she grew up there, right? And so I was retired and came back, and one day, literally, I was having a conversation with the Lord. I said, Lord, I didn't go to church a whole lot when I was in college, but I'm going to church now. I'm back. And so I lived in South Austin, and I would drive past this one particular church that I couldn't tell what it was. And I said, I don't know what kind of church it is. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go. And so I showed up, right? And so became involved and ended up meeting my wife there, and make a long story short, and we became friends. And the thing that drew me to my wife was her drive. She's stunningly beautiful. Period. I don't have to talk about that. It's very easy to see.
We
that.
wonder how you got her to talk to you.
Well,
I'm kidding you, man.
No, I'm good. That's okay. I wonder how she looks at me, but I'm pretty good at talking. But she grew up in a very, very strong, traditional, all-American family, right? Even though her parents would eventually get divorced, they still did things well. Her father was a great man here in Austin. Her mom is still an awesome woman here, her and her husband. And, we would talk and we would go out. But this particular time, she was like, yeah, I need to get home because I got to go to work. I say, okay, well, where do you work? Well, she worked at a dialysis clinic. serving in a community where these people have a lot of money. There was a lot of minorities there. And she was really at the bottom of the totem pole, right? And she would go in early to like in this back room where they do all the dialysis stuff. And she would check all this stuff and do all this stuff. And she came from a pretty privileged home and didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So I knew really quickly that I'm like, wow, I'm dealing with somebody who understands hard work and is driven. And she had a dream to go to the medical program, get in the medical program and become a physician assistant, a mid-level practitioner. And she did it.
That's awesome.
And she did it. And so I was completely attracted to her drive. I knew this was someone I could do life with and someone who would challenge me properly.
Yeah. So after that conversation with God about how I didn't go to church much when I was here, he's like, welcome back.
Welcome
going to
back.
present you with a beautiful bride.
That's right.
I think that's awesome. Let's change the direction one more time, Octavius. You and I were talking a while back, a couple of years ago, about how your anxiety would go off the charts when your son would go out for a run and he maybe wasn't back in what you would think to be a suitable time.
Sure.
Can we talk about this?
Sure. It happened right around the time of the Ahmaud Arbery situation. And, my anxiety would go off the chart, but I refused to be a slave to it, right? Yeah. So we fight through it, but it just speaks to I was being honest about it because a lot of times when we're figures, it's easy to hide, and I just chose not to hide, And I believe I put some on social media about it, and it sparked some conversation, and it was just a moment of understanding of really how much I love my son, how much he carries my legacy. All my kids do, but how much I love him, and what it would be like for me not to have him. And so I'm sure I'm not the only person who had those. Whether whether the person white, black, or Hispanic, or whatever they are, it's we all have those feelings. But it was a time where I thought it'd be good to express it. Like, look, I know I'm this professional. But I have these feelings too. I'm human, right? And I love my children. I want them to come home.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we all have, as parents, and I have two boys that are now grown men, but we all have a certain amount of anxiety when our little ones are out of our sight. Yeah. I mean, I can remember going to the grocery store with my two kids, and if one of them was not on the aisle with me, I was like, where are you? I'm like, didn't grow up this way. I'm not sure where it all comes from, but I have ideas. But, how do you deal with that anxiety? Because it's not something that's just gone away. It is something that you manage through. How do you manage it?
Yes. So that's a really good question. All feeling is a gift from the Lord. All feeling. Sure. My anxiety, my insecurity, my happiness, all those things I feel, God's given them to me as warning signs and things to celebrate. Yeah. So how I handle it is through a lot of prayer and fasting, but also a giving up of my human ability to control. I know that I can't control. As hard as it is for me to say this, I like to believe that I'm a great protector, but I'm not a better protector than the Lord. And so, what I do is I pray and then I release to the Lord. My wife leaves for the morning. I say, Lord, protect her. She's yours. My children go off to school. I say, Lord, protect them. She's there. They're yours. And so at the end of the day, I pray over them, but I know that I'm just Octavius. I'm nothing more. But I do believe in something bigger than me. Sure. And the hope is that the Lord would choose to protect my family when they're not there.
Sure.
When I'm not there.
That's a wonderful attitude. I mean, it's heartfelt, but it's also part of who you are. Yeah. And let me switch gears another time, and I want to talk about you talk about unity. Yes. You talk about getting to eye level, having eye level conversations. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, it essentially means that intimacy breeds temporary instability. And so
say that again. Yeah, that's great.
Intimacy breeds temporary instability, which means when I came to the Lord, there were some things unstable in my life. But I had to cross that barrier in order for him to allow him to search me and for me to recognize the searching, right? To be forgiven. Many times we just say it, but it's more than just saying. It's a shift, a pivot, a change. We want something to change. We can ask the Lord to forgive us all the time, but many times we want to change. And so for me, explain the question again. I'm sorry. No, I think I kind of got off on the Lord thing.
What is unity and an eye level conversation? What do these things mean to you?
Yeah, unity and eye level is something I picked up a few years ago. The power of the locker room as an offensive lineman is strong. One thing that every athlete who played the sport tells you, there's a level of depression that happens when football's over. And when the sport's over, right? I'm assuming it's like in other professions also.
Sure.
But the locker room was a safe place. I loved my teammates beyond what I didn't like about them. My teammates loved me beyond what we liked about them, but beyond what they didn't like about me.
Right.
It's a very difficult coming to recognizing that that's not how it is outside the locker room. And so I went on a quest to promote unity in any way that I can. And a person who has been a pillar in my life is Colonel Craig Flowers. He's a really good friend of mine, a big brother, mentor, and he gave me 3 words that I always knew, but it helped change me and it changed the way that I actually interact. And these 3 words are we, us, and our. To implement we, us, and our in everything. And when I thought about it, the power of the locker room is that it was always about we, us, and our. And so when I think about unity, it is about we, us, and our. And it's beyond what I like about you or dislike about you, right? For the sake of unity.
Sure.
But there's a sacrifice that has to happen in order for unity to happen.
That's right. Interestingly, I want to say this. So I heard an interview with Coach Bill Parcells once, and they asked him, so what are your greatest memories of your NFL coaching career? And he goes, it's not the victories, it's not the Super Bowls, it's not anything. He goes, it was the locker room.
Yes.
After seeing the love that these men had for their teammates and how I get chills telling about it. It's like the love that these people had for their teammates. He goes, that's what I missed. That's what I loved about the sport. Yeah, we had a lot of victories. We had a lot of success.
Yes.
But it was just seeing those teammates being unified.
Yes.
Unified because they truly loved each other and held each other accountable.
That's right.
It's one of the things sports is so great because you learn so many life lessons in any team sport.
Yes.
But that always stuck with me. I want to gently go into another area that might make some people uncomfortable. It doesn't me, because if you don't talk about it, it doesn't make it go away. And that is, let's talk about race relations. Okay, unity is great. I'm a believer in it. I'm a bridge builder, not a bridge breaker. How do we do this? How do we talked about it at lunchtime. The video of Ricky Williams getting stopped by 4 redneck cops in Tyler, right? And not all cops are like that. Most are really good people. But and he's the most gentle guy around and was just like walking, right? How do we get people unified, if you will, to really not just say, hey, unity sounds great, it's wonderful, but actually to do it?
That's right. I truly believe that it starts with the church. The church.
Sure.
Not society, not the rest of the city,
culture,
not the rest of the culture. It starts with us, the church. And when I say church, I mean the church. You're the church. I'm the church.
Of course.
We have to get to a point where we're willing to have the tough conversations about including in order to understand one another. And if we don't include, we can have diverse music, we can have diverse congregations, you can even have a diverse staff and never truly break the barrier related to a lot of the race relations. Until we, the church, jump into the deep water, the deep end of the pool to address it, we have a problem. I.e., I attend, and I'm a pastor at Life Austin, but when I turn on the TV, because of the area I live in, I hear white evangelical. I'm not sure what that is now. I don't know what white evangelical is because I'm just a Christian. I'm a church. I go to the same. I guess I go to the same white evangelical church. Yeah. But I think those type of words, those type of things, start to play a role in our in creating distance in who we are. Right. We have to stick up for one another.
Agree.
Privilege is not a bad thing.
Not at all.
I teach it at the University of Texas as a professor. It's not a bad thing. It's the misuse of privilege. John, when I'm not around, I know you're speaking up for me. When you're not around, you know that I'm speaking up for you. Yeah. That's how we break the barrier. When we speak up for one another, when you stand with one another, and when you actually do work together. That's how you get to where you're going to get.
That's how you break that wall down. That's right.
Yeah, and back in the day, even the church has become distant, right, in a lot of different things, and kind of complicit. Apathy and indifference is our problem today. I think indifference is more, and indifference and apathy are not far from arrogance.
No, I was just thinking the word arrogance.
They're very, very close. And so when we learn to stand shoulder to shoulder, then we can move past what we need to move past and then celebrate what God created.
Yes.
I'm not saying that color is everything, but you know what, John, the truth of the matter is to people who are the minority in the country, color is a big thing. And so what we have to do is recognize that how do we celebrate what God has given us, right? He is the painter. Right? He created the brush. He even created the canvas in which we paint. He did it on purpose. He made me look the way that I look because that's what he wanted. Yeah. He made you look the way you look because that's what he wanted. And until we recognize that when I look into the eyes of another human being, that's a miracle standing in front of me. Once we recognize that, then we'll be able to move it. But I truly believe, this is my take, and I'm okay. I'll stand on this hill, right?
Yeah, me too.
I'll stand on this hill.
I'll stand with you.
Until we, the church, are willing to truly address it and not say it's something we need, but it becomes something that we want. Unity is something we want. Yeah. We will not. It'll be very difficult for us. We won't get to where we need to get to, because that means God can't trust us with that blessing.
That's right.
Right now, can God trust us enough?
That's right. I have a thing I say to people all the time. I may have said it to you before, and that is, we get our true identity not by our zip code, not by where we live, not by the stuff that we have, all the toys and everything. That stuff's fleeting.
Yes.
It's really meaningless. Our identity comes from, we need to see ourselves the way the Creator sees us.
Amen.
He created all of us exactly how He wanted us, what you just said. And when we can connect our head to our heart on that one, see ourselves the way that God sees us. Right. There's a second step to that, which is equally important. That is, see your fellow man the same way.
That's right.
If you can connect your head to your heart on that one, God made you and everybody else the exact way He wanted you to. All the other stuff goes away.
That's right.
It all melts away. You see this person as the masterpiece that God made.
That's right. And every person we see is a masterpiece.
And you're right. It's the faith community that needs to be in the driver's seat.
It's our job. Right. And I look, I know it's easy to take a lot of flack on this kind of stuff, but I'm willing. I believe in the faith community.
I do too.
I believe in what we stand for, because we believe in something bigger than us. There's not a more grand platform than to have something. You believe in something more than what you are, right? You add to it. Right? You don't take from it, and we have to recognize that in order to move forward. Right now, it's about how we feel, and that's a scary piece. It's not about a feeling; it's a principle.
Feelings can lie.
Feelings are fickle.
The Bible never says follow your heart; it says guard your heart.
Guard your heart,
because it's deceitful, right?
That's right.
So. Let's end on a high note.
Yeah,
Octavius, what are your future plans, and how do people connect with you?
Oh, well, I'm obviously on social media. You can just look up my name easy and find a lot of that. My goal right now is really feeding into the students at the University of Texas. I'm feeding into them, running a program called Sports Social Work, but also really working hard at mentorship, mentoring our students in the School of Social Work.
Yeah, you're in the Steve Hicks School of Social Science,
yes.
which is one of the top 10 in the country.
It's great. Yeah, it is, and it's a beautiful place. My boss, Dean Zayas, is amazing. The person I answer to, Dr. Alan Coe, amazing. I'm in a position where I am, I'm being freed up to really, really be who God intended me to be in this during this season in my life. So that's really what I'm up to. And I'm also, always game to speak into young people, always game to speak into men and families, work into the community. My goal is to give back to the community as much as I can.
Of course. One last question, and it's going back to your past. How do you think your life would be different if you hadn't met Coach Bellard?
Oh, wow. That's hard to answer. I'm not sure. I'm really, before meeting Coach Bellard, I know this and I don't talk about it often. I've definitely counseled with it, but there was a heavy sense of despair in my life before meeting Coach Bellard. He was a godsend. He was exactly what I needed at that time, and the Lord knew it. And so I'm not even sure I would be here, if I'm being honest about it. One thing people don't understand about mental health, and particularly how men navigate things related to suicidality, is they don't talk about it. Yeah. They usually don't talk about it. And so that's the scary part. That's the dark part of it. It's definitely a conversation within my own head, but God had different plans. Yeah. We don't have to think about that because it didn't happen, right? And I'm blessed and I'm honored that I'm here to even be able to share that, because maybe there's someone who feels despair. Maybe, and I'm here to tell you, keep your head up. God, He doesn't leave you blank. There are, if it's the drunk on the corner, it could be still, that person can still have a word from the Lord. Of course. It on a ride on a bus ride to work, keep your head up, keep your ear open, because you might have a sign coming, so that you can continue to keep your head up and continue to look forward to life. That's
great. God is always talking to us.
He's always talking.
It's
to us.
up to us to listen.
That's right.
A lot of noise in the world. Quieten yourself.
Yes.
Keep your ears open. Octavious, I love you. I'm proud to call you my friend. You're a great man. You're doing great work, and I want to be there when your daughter has a snot-nosed 16-year-old kid come over to pick her up for the day. I just want to watch the kid cower in fear.
Well, hopefully it's the right 16-year-old young man, right? And I can just shower him with love, and
he's a 16-year-old boy, okay? Come on.
Yeah, I know. But he's still a young man.
You can give him that offensive lineman glare, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And that is our show today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Determined People podcast, and thank you to our guest, Octavious Bishop. I'm honored that he was here. I've been really looking forward to today's interview. If you like the Determined People podcast, please go over to iTunes and drop us a short review. It helps us get noticed and helps us move up in the rankings. If you don't like the podcast, just don't worry about that review. We'll be just fine. I'll be back tomorrow with a 1-minute inspirational thought. Until then, everyone, be well.